Hey guys, it's Leah. Welcome back, or welcome if you are new, and welcome to my January wrap up from worst to best. You guys already know how it goes by now. Every single month I go through every book that I read the month prior, and we do it from worst to best. So we'll go through the worst all the way to the best ones. And in January we had so many good books, so I am so excited to talk to you all about them. So in January I ended up reading 13 books, 2 of which were audiobooks, 2 of which were not on my physical TBR. So all in all I read 11 books on my physical TBR. I'm so happy with that. And one book I'm not going to talk to you guys about today because it is coming in its own reading vlog, and I am so excited for you all to see this because this book, oh my god, this is becoming one of my favorites of all time. So yeah, let's go through the 13 books I read, starting off with the worst, which was The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic by Brianne Randall. Initially when I picked this up I really hadn't heard too many people talking about it, but I knew it was going to be one of those cozy witchy fantasies, and I mean the cover was absolutely gorgeous, so I was like, I'm finally going to get to it. And I cannot remember a single thing that happened in this. Now, a month later, I could read this for the first time again and I would know nothing. All I remember from this was feeling so incredibly bored and like just so unsatisfied with what was happening. The only kind of redeemable thing for me was the atmosphere. I tend to feel like this a lot when it comes to lower stake fantasies, and this was definitely that. I just tend to feel a little bit underwhelmed, and the atmosphere and the coziness is the only thing that is kind of redeemable for me. And that is exactly what happened in this one. I literally did not like any of the characters. I absolutely would have DNF'd this, but I just decided to keep going. And I ended up rating this 2 stars. I don't think I would recommend it unless you are really into that cozy, low stakes, witchy fantasy vibe. But yeah, the atmosphere was redeemable. Other than that, I don't know what to say about that one. The next worst book that I read actually kind of breaks my heart because I heard so many people saying such incredible things about it, especially on TikTok. Like, this book was the hype. This book was all the rage. This book for me, pure rage. The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. I went into this fully expecting a very autumnal and cozy romance, smutty here and there. Again, I've never been so bored in my entire life. Absolutely another one that the only redeemable thing for me was definitely the atmosphere. But still, albeit the way people were talking about it and the way that it was so Gilmore Girls-esque, I was really expecting so much more. So again, another one that I felt quite underwhelmed by. I do think I will try and read the sequel to this that is coming out this year. I don't know again how much I will love it, but I know that one's set in a bookshop, I believe, so I imagine naturally I should probably like it a little bit more, right? But yeah, a little bit underwhelmed by this one. Again, I've kind of blocked out, maybe a trauma response, I've blocked out every single thing that happened in it. Would not recommend. Do you know what, I love doing my wrap-ups this way, but equally when I have like a month where I had a couple of books that I really just did not like, I feel kind of bad kicking off the video like that. But I promise you, like 9 of the books that I read this month I would wholeheartedly recommend. So the next one that I would not recommend was one that I actually listened to the audiobook for. I don't own it, and that was The Mystery Guest by Nita Prose. Nita Prose wrote The Maid, which won the Goodreads Choice Award for, I think, mystery thriller in 2022, I believe. And this is the sequel to that. So going into it, I knew that there was going to be a ton of hype surrounding it, and there definitely is, but I actually haven't seen too many people talk about it. And when I first read The Maid, I did like it. I thought it was okay, but I didn't think, considering it won like the thriller category for the Goodreads Choice Awards, I really did not understand in comparison to the other ones. It wasn't that groundbreaking to me. I enjoyed it enough to want to pick up the sequel, and this series is just not for me. I don't know if I'll ever read anything from this author again unless there is something that they write that I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna fall in love with this. But in general, the Maid series, I don't know if it is just a duology or if there's going to be more. I'm not going to read anymore because this one I ended up rating 2.5 stars. We then have Delicate Dream Department Store by Mai Lee, and this is a book that I wanted to read so bad ever since getting my hands on it, so I'm so happy that I finally have. And I did really like this one. I think if you want to read translated fiction that is very much in the vein of Before the Coffee Gets Cold or Days at the Murasaki Bookshop, something very cozy in that translated fiction space that is quite low stakes but still has slight character analysis, I think you would really love this. This book was so comforting. We are basically following our protagonist who works at a department store of dreams. In this world, people can come to this department store and buy dreams, any sort of dreams that they want. Some people can even buy nightmares, and it is very much reading this before you go to bed, such joy. I feel like so many people would absolutely adore this, and I definitely would say I'm one of these people. I did wish that it went a little bit further in its commentary about dreams and why we dream and why people would want certain dreams. I feel like there was such good possible exploration surrounding that, and don't get me wrong, there definitely was slight exploration, but I think it just could have gone a lot further and I kind of wish it did. But all in all, this is just such a comforting read, and if you are after that, I would highly recommend this one. Like, you will also fly through it. It was so fast paced. I rated this one 3 stars. I'm really intrigued to see what this author does next, or what is translated by them next, and I'm really excited. We then have a proof of a book that I was so excited to be released and so excited to read, and that is A Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faisal. I've never read anything from this author before. I know that they are very much loved in the fantasy sort of genre, and I really enjoyed this. So many people are going to love this. So many people are going to eat this up, and it was so fun. I would definitely say that I did prefer the second half more so than the first half. In the first half, there was a lot of world building, which I understand, it is a fantasy book. By the second half, it paid off from the first half so much. The tensions within this book, like, I was kind of giggling, kicking my feet, I'm not gonna lie. But in A Tempest of Tea, we are following Artie? I think her name is Arfi. We are following her, and she owns this tea shop, this tea room, where vampires can basically just come and like feed on people, and like they're drinking blood out of teacups. So iconic. But this is a heist fantasy, and I feel like what comes alongside that all of the time in this sort of trope is found family, and there was the perfect found family in this. I love so much how everyone had their own very individual kind of takes on life and very different motives, but when it came to the heist and like what they were after, it all just blended so perfectly, and it really questioned morals, and I loved the character analysis surrounding that. And I don't normally like heists in fantasy books, but this one, I may have been converted. It was so fun and so good. I need the second book right now, because the way that this one ended, and I can imagine we're probably not going to get that until like 2025, 2026. I just absolutely adored it, and I feel like so many people are also going to love this. I ended up rating this one like kind of 3.75 if I was being picky. I did round it up to a 4 stars, but it was so good. Would highly recommend that one. We then had the second audiobook that I listened to for the month, which I also don't own, and that is All About Love by Bell Hooks. Also my first non-fiction of the month. I don't know why, but I was really craving that non-fiction feeling, and this is one that I wanted to read for years, so I decided to finally pick up the audiobook, and I did really like this one. I will say I went into it with quite high expectations, because everybody praises about this book. Everyone like prays to this book. Everyone loves it. So naturally going into it, I also thought that I would feel like that. And in uni, I studied Bell Hooks a lot when it came to her feminism. So I feel like going into this book, nothing was really groundbreaking or 100% new to me, which is absolutely fine. I feel like it's still great to be reminded of things in that sort of non-fiction genre when it comes to love and relationships. It's always good to have that reminder. And the way that Bell Hooks writes was so captivating. And even though it's non-fiction, it feels so immersive and so personal, and I do definitely understand why so many people love this. I would absolutely recommend it. I didn't really know if I wanted to rate it, because I'm going against rating non-fiction, but in this instance I did end up rating it 4 stars. I would definitely recommend it if you are thinking about going into it. Definitely not non-fiction. We then have We Spread by Ian Reid. This is one for the ambiguous girlies. If you love ambiguous, strange, speculative fiction where honestly you're gonna have more questions by the end than you did at the beginning, then you need to read this book. I absolutely loved it so much. I'd always had it kind of on my radar, and then had it on my shelf, and then I was just like, do you know what? I think it's time. I adored it, and I also just didn't really realise when reading this that Ian Reid is the author of I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which was one of the first like weird horror sort of books that I ever read, and I loved that book. The film, definitely not. I did not like the adaptation, but that book I adored, so I'm not surprised after finding out that that was the same author that I loved this. But in this, we are basically following our protagonist, who is an elderly woman, and she gets one day admitted into this care home facility. There are only like 6 other people in this care home. The narrator is so unreliable, which I love so much, but especially when it comes to weirder fiction, just makes for such great ambiguity. And our protagonist doesn't really know if everything that is happening to her, like if there's something bigger at play in this care home, or if it is just like a deterioration of her mind because she's getting older. And for that, it was such great commentary and such great discussion. I feel like this is a book that I wouldn't recommend to masses of people. I feel like I would only recommend this to you if you like ambiguous fiction, like Leave the World Behind, which is also Mona Awad firstly blurbs this, but so does Rumana Lam, who wrote Leave the World Behind, and it is very much similar in that vein. But I adored this. I love Ian Reid's writing. I loved the kind of like nature, weird grossness aspect of this also. Would highly recommend. Rated it 4 stars. Extremely different from We Spread, we then have You Again by Kate Goldbeck. I really wanted to read this in autumn last year, but I never ended up getting around to it, so I just thought I do not want to wait another year, so we're gonna read it in January. And this was so good. Definitely one of my favorite romance books that I have read in such a long time. The tension in this, the characters as individuals but also together. I absolutely loved the bisexual representation in this. I loved how kind of unhinged our female protagonist was. Like, her brain, she's fucking hilarious. And I loved that. I think she's definitely one of my favorite characters in general that I've read from in a really long time. If you want a really good romance book that also definitely is When Harry Met Sally vibes, it's definitely autumnal. I think you can also read it any time of the year though, then you should definitely put this one on your radar. I do know that this one obviously got a lot of hype on TikTok last year, and absolutely praise to that. I 100% agree. I completely understand. And it was just so good. Like, one of my biggest takeaways from this was, one, the bisexual representation. I loved how that came to play in our couple's relationship. I also loved, in terms of their relationship, how it spanned over so long, and they had kind of like so many opportunities to explore one another, and it just never happened until a certain moment. A perfect friends to lovers, in my opinion. It really solidified for me that I do now like friends to lovers in romance books. So if you have any more recommendations for friends to lovers, please let me know. Absolutely superb. It's one that I absolutely see myself rereading in autumn. I honestly have not been able to stop thinking about it. I loved them. I loved this so much. And I also rated that one 4 stars. Another 4 stars was Ripe by Sarah Rose Etter. This was one that I actually started reading in 2023, like early 2023. I got like 30 pages in and just put it down. Don't know why I did that, and decided to pick it back up in 2024. I did actually also film my experience reading this in like what I read in a week as a bookseller video. I'll leave it up above if you want to give that a watch. But I absolutely adored this. This is a book definitely for the consumerist girlies, the girls who live in a corporate world when all they want to do is live and not work. I adored the way that this spoke about consumerism and capitalism and mental health and how that all kind of intertwines together. This was so raw and so real, and our protagonist felt so real to me. Like, I could perfectly visualize her. Like, so many of her attributes I see in myself, and it made it quite a personal reading experience, to be honest. But all in all, the way that mental health was represented in this, our protagonist is basically living life, like starting new jobs, navigating her 20s, navigating womanhood, and she constantly talks about how she feels like she has this black hole following her and her entire life. And I loved how that was used as a metaphor for mental illness. Absolutely superb. Sarah Rose Etter's writing too was so beautiful and raw and unique, and I was honestly, like, the ending of this book, jaw was on the floor. I had to stare at the wall for like 2 hours straight. No thoughts, head empty, just trauma. But it was so good, and I'm so excited to read more from her. I feel like she is an author that people kind of need to watch. I feel like she's absolutely going to kind of blow up, and like everyone's going to adore her. Would 100% without a doubt recommend this. We then have my first Clarice Lispector that I read in January in a little itty bitty tiny little short story collection. This one is Daydream and Drunkenness of a Young Lady, and I just picked this up because I wanted to have that little break in between some of her novels. I am so hyper aware that I do not have many of her novels left to read. I say that I probably have like 5, but then I have no more. I'm never going to be able to read a Clarice Lispector again for the first time if I read these 5 novels too quickly. So I kind of wanted to break that up and start this little collection. In this we have 3 different stories, and overall as a collection I rated it 4 stars. But there was a short story in this called Love, and that was definitely one of my favorite pieces of writing that I have read from Clarice Lispector yet. 5 stars. I feel like I would love to sit down with her and have stern words about how that was not a full novel, but it was so good. I do get a lot of questions, people asking me about Clarice Lispector, about what is the best kind of place to start with her, and as much in novel terms I would definitely say Near to the Wild Heart, because it's the most accessible I've read so far, but also her debut, so that's a great place to start. I would also definitely say a short story collection like this one. I feel like in this specific short story collections, the 3 works are all so similar but also so different, and her writing styles in each of them feel so different in comparison to what her full-on novels feel like. And I feel like if you want to get into her writing, this is a really good way to kind of see what her taste is like and to see what her writing is like and see if you like that. It's a Clarice Lispector. Of course I loved it. I rated it 4 stars. I'm never going to stop talking about her, and you'll see in a sec. And then on to the last 2 books. The second best book that I read in January was a tome. Magnolia Park's A Long Way Home. I have absolutely not recovered from this. I will fucking cry. I did film my experience reading this and my reactions to the ending in a recent reading vlog, and I'm so happy that I did, because oh my, I sobbed terribly, and I never cry at books. I'm terrified to read the next Magnolia Parks book. I adored this one so much. Julian Hates, love of my life. Like, I am obsessed with this series, and this really just did solidify that for me. As always, I absolutely adore Jessa Hastings' writing. I love how quick and easy these are to fly through. I love the relationships in this. I love the connections in this. I love the friendship element. I love the fashion element. I love everything about this series, and I'm so excited to carry on and read obviously the next Daisy Hates book, but the next Magnolia Parks book I am not ready for, and I am definitely terrified. I think I will film my reactions to that because, again, I will no doubt sob. I just adore this series so much, and I'm so happy that I read one in January. You will no doubt see more of this series in my February wrap up, and I may be crying in it. And this one I did rate 4.5 stars. And then going on to my best book, my favourite book that I read in January. Take a wild guess as to who the author is. Clarice Lispector. We have The Besieged City by Miss Clarice Lispector. And guys, this is one of my favourites that I've read from her so far. 5 stars, infinite amount of stars to be honest. In The Besieged City, Clarice Lispector writes so brilliantly, period, but she writes so brilliantly about such mundane and minuscule things in life in comparison to the bigger and the grander things. In this specifically, she writes so much about like spaces and the way furniture or dust even take up a space, and how as humans we very rarely observe these things, and when we do, like, what does it mean, and what does it mean when we don't do it either? Like, how do we live our life? Not really observing the minuscule things that honestly matter just as much as the bigger. She just so brilliantly puts every thought that I've ever had in my brain on paper. It is so existentialist, and I'm just so in awe every single time. She speaks so much about what it takes to build a city, who occupies a city, what happens when nobody is occupying a city, like, is it still a city if no one is there? It is just astounding the way she writes about characters and their relationships to one another, and relationships to ourselves and our body and our minds and just the universe. She is just, oh my god, like, I don't know what I can say anymore that I haven't already said about her. But without a doubt, The Besieged City was the best book that I read in January, and obviously I rated it 5 stars. So those were 12 of the 13 books that I read in January. Obviously I didn't speak about one of the books, but that will be coming very, very soon, and I'm so excited for you guys to see it. This vlog is definitely going to become one of my favorite things that I've ever done on this channel, and I'm so excited for it. Equally terrified, but I hope you guys love it. But yeah, those were the 13 books that I read in January. If you have read any of them, please let me know what you thought about them, whether you agree with my thoughts or you disagree with my thoughts, if any of them are on your radar, and also feel free to let me know what your favorite and worst books of January were. I love hearing what your guys' best and worst books are of a month, or just in general, so please let me know. I'm so nosy. I love how the lighting just completely changes as I'm literally finishing this video. Or if you want to show that you stayed until the very end but you don't really know what to comment any blue emoji. And yeah guys, thank you so much for watching and for spending some time with me. As always, if you're not subscribed yet and you enjoyed this video, it would mean so much to have you here. And yeah, thank you so much for spending some time with me. I really do hope you did enjoy, and I will see you again very, very soon with another video.